Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, November 26th, aka also known as Black Friday. Let's hop in here. We may have to go back to the title here and restart. Apparently there's just a bug in Shadowverse now that if you leave it too long on the main menu, it just loses its network connection. I don't even think that is anything to do with my network settings at all. Um, so since it is Black Friday, yesterday was Thanksgiving, and honestly I didn't do much. Not even because it was Thanksgiving, more just due to insomnia. Like I've been uh, particularly just taking like 5-6 hour cat naps, staying awake for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and um, then taking another 6 hour cat nap, um, which, yeah, is definitely not letting me accomplish too much. Um, Although, at a certain point, I also did watch Battlestar Galactica: The Plan and all of a Amazon Prime TV series called Clarkson's Farm, starring Jeremy Clarkson, who was one of the people from Top Gear, but not anymore, and he's the one that always gets in trouble for saying something or doing something inflammatory for at least a large portion of the world. Although I will say Clarkson's Farm doesn't really get into it too much. He makes a few jabs and comments and jokes here and there, but mostly it's just kind of a funny documentary of watching somebody who is very old and very incompetent trying to run a farm for the first time in his life with no experience or knowledge or education on it. Uh, Run a farm in Britain in the middle of COVID pandemic, in the middle of a terrible weather season, and still somehow managing to make any profit at all, which is crazy. I'm fairly certain they cooked the books just so after a year of farming, he managed to make $100 out of a year of farming. But the problem with farming accounting is it's just such a weirdly scaled up thing. When you're buying or renting $1 million combine harvesters, when you're spending $50,000-$60,000 on tractors, and then potentially another $50,000-$60,000 on several times over on equipment or fertilizer or seeds. It is just at such a different scale that you honestly and realistically cannot ever call a farmer poor. This is not sharecroppers from 200 years ago in the United States where they are given 1 acre of land and they're literally starving to death. This is very rich people who can invest a lot and who can afford to lose a lot, who have significant advantages and subsidies that will cover them not growing things. And it's the same in the United States as it is in the UK, really, as far as subsidies and things like that. It's probably the same in a lot of countries. Meanwhile, an inner city like family in the middle of Chicago has like no land to their name. They're not going to get any subsidiaries like a farmer would. They are never going to have the opportunity to potentially spend $100,000 on seeds. So that farmers are rich to a certain extent. They're rich gamblers. They play big, they lose big. In the end, it's not the same thing, and yet they have a pretty good PR team. And in all fairness, yes, some farmers and ranchers are getting screwed over by giant corporations, like the chicken corporations, for instance. And I do believe that propaganda that gets put out there to be true statements. But That doesn't inherently make people the good guys just because they're getting screwed over by other bad guys. The thing I think most people need to take away from it is from any concept of farming, and I don't even know why I have a rant about this because I really don't care. I guess we'll play some Forcecraft today. We have basically no news because of Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and all of that, so we're going to be done fairly quickly. Just games that came out on Steam. The thing to remember, though, is an acre is literally the amount of land that they determined a single family could spend a year on, harvest, and feed themselves and manage. And when you have farmers that have hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, that is a resource disparity that needs to be kind of considered. We have gone to family factory farming because not everybody wants to be a farmer, whereas in the past it was everybody was a farmer and everybody was just struggling to feed themselves. But as corruption goes, the trading off of land in a very slow process of not even really eminent domain, but just poverty, having people sell off land that they can't manage, and bigger farmers, conglomerates, being able to buy and strong arm the system so that they can buy land away from people. You saw this big shift of land and land resources going from the general populace, the majority of people owning land, down to the point where we are now in a situation where a significant percentage of people in the United States and around the world don't own any land at all. They don't even own homes. They're renting, and corporations have purchased the homes that were once acres of farmland that had been sold up and chopped up to be turned into cities and suburbs of cities as cities expanded. And at one generation that was mostly baby boomers and previous generations owning the land and owning the house, although in a lot of cases, even when you buy a house, you're selling, you're not getting the rights to potentially sell the wood or the minerals or water rights or anything like that on the land. Anyways, there's just these constant increase of rules or decrease of rights as far as landowners go, and a lot of that has to do with cities. A lot of that has to do with how corruption, even when it seems like it's not corruption, still is there at even the local city government level. And even if the reasoning behind something, like, sure, it makes a lot of sense to say somebody in the middle of a heavily dense urban city cannot just start digging and mining, because that would potentially cause them to sink in the ground or mine under other people's land. But a corporation definitely could petition a small city to set up a mine and start digging and mining under people's houses. They could at least try it. They would have the lawyers and the arguments ready and the paperwork ready to apply for something like that, whereas an individual would be left out of a local city meeting if they tried to petition for something like that, or given so much red tape that it would never happen. And frankly, mining is the bad example there. The much better example is gardening and ranching. Almost every city in the United States has some level of limitations, if not outright bans, of having non-pet like animals in your yard, if you own land, own a house. So you can't have a single cow for your own milk. A lot of places it's just straight up illegal due to FDA regulations or other reasons to even grow your own food. That's how far people have been pushed into this dependency on existing systems that have been built to benefit large, rich corporations, rich people in general, where you can't even have your own food grown. You can't have a single cow for your own milk. That would be about, that you would think at the very least that would be a minimal acceptable standard. But nope.
There is no other way. There is no retreat.
So what I would say at the end of this diatribe of this TED Talk is, when you historically look at how land has been effectively stolen from the lower class, the middle class, that's something that, in fairness, peasants and slaves never had, but because all the land belonged to like the king or the slave owner. And in fairness, I think even now in the UK, you're still legally renting the land from the queen. But when you look at how that happened and how that consistently happened across different cultures and different countries, there clearly should have been at least a consideration of doing it differently. Like, it would probably be better to not involve oligarchs and rich corporations and rich people. I would think it probably would be better in the United States if all farmland belonged to the United States and they straight up had a post office like system to set up designs to never really make a profit or have to worry about that, to run off tax dollars and to grow the food that needs to be grown to meet the demands of its citizenry. So much so that people could straight up actually be held accountable. Politicians can be held accountable and voted out if people are just not getting the food that they even want. It certainly would have undermined some of the corrupt, ridiculous policies of corn growing in the United States. There are definitely way too many fields growing corn to make ethanol a lot of times, and high fructose corn syrup, which also like caused major health crises. In a lot of ways, the health care problem of the United States probably is heavily exacerbated, or if not straight up caused, because of high fructose corn syrup being made, and that is only made and added to foods because it is so subsidized and so cheap and added to food to make food cheaper. All of those issues could have been addressed faster and very possibly would have never existed had the United States government just been in charge of the food. In the same way that the United States government has a monopoly on the military, you can't just go make your own military. We rely on, the United States citizens rely on the U.S. military to theoretically protect them. Arguable how much that they really do that. and versus the U.S. military just protecting moneyed interests, or protecting whatever the government's interests are, which seem to be out of line with the citizens' interests. But there is a huge argument that we could be in the United States, which has a vast amount of land compared to most countries. We could be growing a lot more soybeans, a lot more fruits and vegetables that are either cheaper at the moment to import because they can use slave labor outside of a country. Instead of just growing corn or leaving the fields barren, empty. There is also a huge argument about just kind of the ridiculousness of the fact that we have sterilized seeds being sold year over year by corporations. That's something that you would easily eliminate if the government was in charge of just a straight up vertical monopoly of the farming things. It's a national defense issue too. Like it would be like part of the reason why the United States is reluctant to push China on a lot of things is because China is manipulating its economy enough to buy so much corn and other things from the United States for no real reason. They buy it and they basically just let it rot on the way to China, not because they really want the products, but because they just want to have a financial tie, a financial hook on the fish of the United States that would hurt the United States. Like China as a communist country has definitely learned a lesson on how manipulating the United States as a capitalist country, and the United States has not learned a lesson to protect itself from that.
I'm already a proper lady, you know. I take so much for that axe.
But yeah, if we had a post office-like system that ran farms, it probably would still be very factory farming. It still probably would be only one farmer driving a tractor for hundreds of acres. But that wouldn't really matter, because then there would be the right things being grown in the United States, more diversity of things grown. Fields would be not over-farmed. And this is certainly something that could have happened at the formation of the United States. If the tobacco fields and the vast amount of tobacco that was being grown in those days had been run by the government, then there really wouldn't have ever been a reason, any capitalistic reason to for there to be tobacco companies putting in cancerous additives into tobacco. While tobacco itself definitely would still cause cancer, the instances, at least to my research, my understanding of it, the incidences of actually getting lung cancer were fairly low, considering how almost everybody was smoking when they were rolling their own and growing their own tobacco and making their own cigarettes. It was only when they added the addictive chemicals and the other carcinogens that it started getting worse and worse and worse. So they took a bad addictive product and made it even worse, whereas the US government, I think, could have been easily, not easily, but could have been told straight up that tobacco was bad and pivoted away from growing tobacco fairly easily. Certainly now, also the only reason why hemp as a product, ignoring the marijuana aspect or feel of hemp if we were growing a large amount of hemp right now. There would be, at the very least, less reliance on just cotton growing, which is, I think, a lot harder to grow cotton than it is to grow the same amount of hemp. And then we could then have a better resource for making clothing on top of a lot of other things. But yeah, that was a 20-minute TED Talk as far as farming, which I suppose that's about as Thanksgiving-y as I'm gonna get. Thanksgiving itself is its own bag of worms, if that's a real phrase, as this kind of ridiculous holiday towards a fictional event, and that is just straight up whitewashing how incredibly bad the settlers, not just Christopher Columbus, he is a individual that you can certainly point to his real history and see that he was an awful person even by his own time standards, but just the first settlers of the United States in particular were a collection of people who were undesirables. Is a bad word to use, but it is probably the most accurate. People who were pretty bad even compared to their times from the United States, and wanted to come from the UK, and they wanted to come to the United States to establish their own towns that would be even more restrictive in almost every aspect, but allowing for Protestant religions compared to having to be forced to follow the Church of England. But you can certainly see over the history of the United States, the Protestant religious people that came, and I imagine a significant number of people didn't come just for quote-unquote religious freedom. I imagine a lot of people were kindly asked to leave or were on the verge of being thrown in jail and shipped off to Australia or something like that otherwise. But yeah, none of the Protestant religions in the United States these days are these screaming bastions of freedom and progressiveness. The closest example I can think of is one religion that basically doesn't believe in anything actually religious at all, and isn't likely to be really considered a strict Christian Protestant branch at all. Although in all fairness, every Protestant religion has at least one other Protestant religion they don't really consider to be Christian. And they're all divided in infighting for the most part. But a great way to prove that point is to show that it took a significant amount of time before you had you had like Buddhism or Shintoism or anything like that, or Islam or Sikh religions. And every time those religions did make it to the United States, they really only made it to the United States because a significant portion of people from somewhere else in the world brought it as part of their culture. So that there is clearly a lack of open-mindedness or communication, which kind of makes sense for that time. That you wouldn't just be able to easily hear about Buddhism and then shift to Buddhism. The only exception really to that in the United States is the Islam was adopted by a fairly significant number of African Americans at some point, but that's about it.
Stop it!
Here I come.
Ironically, none of the Mexican religions from Mexico have really made large in water or large gains in the United States. None of the Caribbean religions really made it to the United States, and if anything, most Caribbean religions were just labeled as voodoo and sangria, and were then heavily influenced the opposite direction. Way more Catholic and Protestant missionaries went to other countries and influenced other religions versus the other way around.
Raise, shine forth.
Which, yeah. So, if you run into a situation where you try to look at Thanksgiving and try and figure out what could it be about, what could it really, what value could it really have, what lesson can it really teach, it's not going to be about sharing or being a
Design is meaningless.
being a good guest. Like, I imagine the Native Americans were fairly good guests for a while, but the Protestants certainly weren't good visitors in the long run. Like, you can certainly go over the sappy stuff we tell children, but there's really zero truth in any of that as far as Thanksgiving. Or you can go over the self-aggrandizing, narcissistic concept of somebody, usually a family member, usually somebody who feels like they are providing for the family more than anything else, wanting everybody else to be thankful of them and not being able to just directly say it. Let's be honest, usually it's a parent. Thanksgiving, in a lot of ways, in modern time, is parents telling their kids, you better be thankful of me and that you get any food on the table whatsoever. Maybe it's spiced up and said a lot nicer than that, but that's basically what Thanksgiving is as a message to a lot of kids, which ignores the fact that kids nobody ever chooses to be born, certainly not born into a specific family as far as we know, and it's not like children, or particularly are free and safe to point out, oh, actually you're not providing much as you should anyways. Like, you chose to have a kid and then you're broke and complain all the time, and you don't fulfill the financial needs or the emotional needs of your children. Like, that is a lot of bad parents out there are exactly like that. And frankly, it's just a bad thing. The second you're making demands for anything, or putting timelines on anything. That's a bad situation you've created. You've put a timeline on it, and you've forced something. It is not a willful, willing, joyful, off the top of the head thankfulness. Like, in all fairness, like, people maybe shouldn't take people for granted, but they do, and a true generous spirit would know that for the case, like, and still do what they feel is right. Like, you shouldn't do good things or provide for people, or provide for even your own children, with the expectation of ever being thanked whatsoever. There's a reason why there's a saying called parents. There's a saying that goes, parenting is a thankless job, because yeah, you basically signed up for that as soon as you became a parent, or and Thanksgiving really is the beginning of a lot of forced sentiment for nearly like 3 months, really. 2 months at least. I mean, let's face it, Christmas basically starts after October, after Halloween at this point.
Here I come.
And then when you get to Christmas, it's the same thing. There's a lot of parents that's like demanding or expecting thanks for providing perhaps the only thing they provide whatsoever to a kid, as far as a gift, or as far as anything other than just bare necessities, and then expecting to be rewarded for providing those things.
Taste buds quiver.
And that at the core of it is why I'm generally never happy with the Christmas season. Like, because even if that's not something that's ever happened in your family, if you've just got generations on generations of truly generous, kind people in your family, you can never get away from that. I mean, I literally hide away from going to shops, not just to avoid like Black Friday rushes, but just going into a Walmart, which in fairness you hear this from like 4 aisles over, but even when it's not Christmas season, but it's way worse during Christmas season, you just hear the awfulness that is spouted out by parents. And you know, there are some kids also that are just poorly behaved and brats and throwing fits too, and that's no good either. Like, it really is just mentally depressing to be in a shop, or just to even see Christmas movies preaching the same consumerism and kind of greed and capitalism.
Hoist the divine blade high.
And even if you are trying for like a true meaning of Christmas, or just a Christian perspective of all of that, you really don't get away from the same sentiment, because at the core of it, while Christmas is the celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ, the main story of Jesus Christ that is preached year round is that Jesus is giving you the best gift ever of a path to heaven, and you should sing praises of him, thank him, and appreciate him and love him. And that is year round, Christmas included, which, much like the parent issue, nobody ever said that nobody ever picked to go to hell, or nobody ever picked that there would be an option to go to hell even. So yeah, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it all sucks. It's a terrible, terrible season, and a terrible point during the time of the year. I would frankly be happier if more people would just admit they're miserable because of the sun being out less and move on with their lives. There's also major things, particularly around Christmas, but also Thanksgiving, of just this willful willingness to be dishonest. Like, I'm even willing to turn a blind eye to the whole Santa Claus thing for little kids. I'm willing to play along with that. But when you have potentially 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 21-year-olds still talking to their other 21-year-old friends and still pretending like Santa Claus is a thing, I mean, at a certain point, that's just ridiculous. And I think with the vast increase of what most people would agree are dangerous conspiracy theories and buying into lies, I think we have seen that those attitudes boil over a lot. Too. But yeah, there's a lot of just play acting, a lot of lying that happens during the season. So it's not particularly, I think, a good thing to promote dishonesty. And if some myths and some legends and some things go away and stop being a part of Christmas, if Santa Claus, for instance, stopped becoming a part of Christmas year after year, somehow magically that happened, probably would be better for society and at the whole. Not every tradition needs to be kept. In fact, almost every tradition shouldn't be kept. Usually when somebody says that it's a tradition, that's because they have no better reason for it to still exist. Anyways, let's cover the video game news, because there's no way to wrap up that kind of conversation. It will just go on forever, and every year it happens, and it's incredibly depressing if you let it get to you. Okay. Unity for Games, I think I just started following them on Twitter, retweeted the magic of Cinemachine 2.6 in Unity, which Cinemachine I think is a in part a system in which they can capture face recognition and puppet things, but I'm not even seeing that in this article. This article's actually talking about a whole bunch of other stuff. Following Unity for Games is kind of the problem. Nope, here it is. This is what caught my eye, where somebody has just straight up a phone and it is figuring out the puppeting and getting an X and a Y and Z, but I think it is also getting her blinking and her mouth and her nose, so that there's quite a lot going on here. And while this isn't probably going to just immediately replace the face rigging you would do with a AAA game, this works probably way better and way easier for a third-party animator for a video game to say, hey, we want this kid, we want him to do this, and instead of having to start from scratch and then hand code every animation or find a whole bunch of different animations and copy and paste all of the animations together, you could just straight up pull out your phone and say, all right, for the first pass, I am going to just straight out act out how I want this character to look and what I want him to do. I think first pass is probably about as much as you would want to do here, though. And you probably, much like movie making, wouldn't want to do a 12-minute long scene with no cuts either. That would be too long for a video game cutscene anyways. But you could definitely do one scene as one character looking like at another character that's not there. Then you do another pass where you act as the other character, and you just fill in an entire environment that way. Also, since this is a kid, like, real easy there to get a kid's actual weirdo interactions with their face, because kids in particular are not as mimicking of what is the average normal actions of a face as adults all are. Adults tend to generally all like turn their eyes and look and smile in the same way. They've seen millions of other people turn their eyes and look and blink the same way, and so being a species that does mimic people subconsciously, they've become very homogenized. Whereas kids have spasms and twigs and weird things. So yeah, something like this to make a first pass and then to go in there and adjust the metrics probably would speed up the process in a really fast way. So that's really interesting. The problem, I would say, with like saying anything nice about Unity is, whereas at one time Unity was the go-to place to for small video game developers, single A, independent games, AA games, all using Unity. A lot of first-person shooting games and AAA games either using their own engine or Unreal. With their new licensing of the past year or so that they've gone to and their new focus, it feels like Unity really doesn't want to get the next generation using their software, which would be almost the equivalent if Adobe Photoshop all of a sudden stopped selling student versions of their software and stopped giving copies of Adobe Photoshop to schools. If a generation of 4 or 5 years of people were all using a different photo editing software, say GIMP instead, the free Photoshop equivalent that doesn't have quite as many features certainly, but it's still fine. If Adobe started doing that and just didn't even care about the next generation, it would be very soon, maybe 10 years, before nobody in the industry at all was actually using Adobe Photoshop, because it's not like people really love Adobe Photoshop. It's just that people are used to using Adobe Photoshop. On the other hand, the Unity Asset Store is having a Black Friday sale, which seems weird. Like, Black Friday as a concept is not something I would have expected a asset store for game programmers to offer. Like, the idea that people would be holding back to buy 3D assets to put in the games they're developing until Black Friday is kind of ridiculous. If anything, if a Black Friday sale really had an effect on the video game industry, it's going to have a negative effect, because that means now 6-month projects that take 6 months to be finished will all end in about 6 months from Black Friday, and we'll have just a huge amount of probably cheaply made, low effort video games 6 months from now or less, assuming the low effort asset flips even take six months to make. A lot of them might probably take less than 6 days to make. It just doesn't feel professional. There is, when you're in any industry, there is a general feel that I have that you would be given the retail discount, the business discount, if you're buying something, because you're expected to come back and buy things throughout the course of the year over and over again. But the idea that there would be specific sales to get you to buy at specific points is not something you expect for businesses to offer other businesses. Well, I don't know what I want to do here. Just attack here, here, here. Put this on the field in the turn. The concept of Black Friday in particular is not a particularly stable or good one. At the core of it, not to get back into another TED Talk or ramble, but the concept of Black Friday only exists because people, individuals, can't plan ahead or budget or buy things throughout the course of the year at a more stable time. Instead, they run up a bunch of credit cards in a lot of cases during the holiday seasons and starting with Black Friday, and then they're in debt paying down those credit cards and paying interest on credit cards for the rest of the year. Well, businesses, on the other hand, either you could say are supposed to be smarter than that and have smarter people and accountants and budgeters that would have you buy things when you need to actually have them in time, or buy things throughout the year at a more stable price. Or, on the other hand, option B is businesses are stupid and they constantly are running on debt, and they're allowed a lot more options through taxes to write off debt and losing money on interests and loans. The core of starting a business for almost anyone is that initial business loan that would start a business on day one being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt at minimum. So
the hunt has only begun.
Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous. That's not to say businesses don't haggle, but it is usually more of a haggling each time, not a waiting for a sale. Moving on to video game news, Battlefield 2042's second major update is now available, according to Video Games Chronicles. I will say there is basically no GameDeveloper.com news articles at all today. They seem to have wrapped up very early for Thanksgiving and have not posted anything. It is also interesting to point out that the only website that I follow on Twitter, as far as mainstream video game journalist sites, that said Happy Thanksgiving and pandered to that was Gamatsu. I kind of assume it is a Japanese run at some level company, because they're so focused on covering Japanese games in English language, or at least they have an English language option. I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually, by default, Gamatsu is a Japanese company that just happens to translate to English fairly well. Which I'm not sure which way you would really want to go with that. Like, On one hand, you could say
Impressive.
maybe nobody should say Happy Thanksgiving and no business should try and pander to holidays in the first place. We shouldn't encourage businesses to become the next Coca-Cola,
Looks like I won.
influencing and profiting off of Christmas in particular. On the other hand, you could say maybe Video Games Chronicle and GameDeveloper.com are just so liberal that they don't want to say Happy Thanksgiving, as they think their silence is actually a political statement. In fairness, though, I will say that they're at least not so incredibly liberal or woke or social justice warrior
My quarry won't escape that easy.
type. They're not so SJW-y, I would say, is probably the best way to say it. That either one of them put out Happy Indigenous Native Americans and Indigenous Americans Day. Which I am sure plenty of websites did do that. Video Games Chronicle says Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl enjoyed Japanese second biggest Switch launch. Only Animal Crossing New Horizons sold more in the first 3 days in that country, which, okay. That might very well speak to the age of people who are playing the Switch in Japan. If they probably have nostalgia for 2006 DS games, then they were probably at least 10 when they were in 2006. It's now 2021, which would be 15 years. So 25 years old would be my guess, if I was just going to pick a random number.
Stay away. No.
That being said, I think maybe a lot of kids are also very hyped on Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl for maybe not good reasons, but they may have just done a very good job with the advertising in countering the bad advertisement that really happened around the most recent mainstream sequel, which was Sword and Shield. Yeah, Sword and Shield right now should be selling a lot more than it is. I think we may have already talked about this. Next week's 3 Epic Game Stores have been confirmed: Dead by Daylight and Wall True Learn, which I've never heard of Wall True Learn, and they seem like they don't even have a picture to show with Wall True Learn, which maybe it is an incredibly small indie educational game. They're running a Black Friday sale. Code for something that is written Wall True Learn here without a semicolon on it would be calling a function of learn in something that I almost would assume is Python, because there's no semicolon after it, but maybe they just lost that. But I'm not even sure. In Python this would be right. It's all capital. That's a weird way to write things with everything in capitals. It's not a good style. Okay, we'll do this.
Hatred is a curse.
And then Just gonna do this.
Well met, and farewell.
And I should have evolved that. If you're running a function using while true, it will go forever, which there's probably better ways to make a loop to do that, but that is a fairly standard basic way to accomplish that.
Ahoy, musk fruit.
You are done for.
The thing about a lot of programming, not to get into a long explanation, but a lot of programming does not take into consideration the idea of how your program would work in either a real-time operating system or in parallel with other programs at all. And so when you make a program
Who's next?
that is straight up
The hunt
straight
has
up on
only begun.
working around the concept of
Say goodbye. Your time is up. Who's next?
it's working on the concept of it's just going to run its code over and over again and never pause and never check to see if any other code wants to run, or if the system is sending any error, the operating system program itself is sending any errors or feedback. You're making a fairly basic program there, which most programmers are making a fairly basic program there. But when you start to think about embedded programming or operating system programming, you then have to
Every shot is a miracle.
potentially write your code a little bit better to work well with others. And that's something that won't be taught in the first few years of programming classes. And certainly when I was taught programming, and that also led to a lot of programs that would lock up a computer on Windows 95 operating systems and cause you to reboot the whole computer because there's just there wasn't enough of a system to catch infinite loops or catch other problems, catch hung programs that are just not doing anything. Moving on with video game news, Uncharted 4's PC and PS5 versions removes multiplayer according to rating boards. Legacy of Thieves may not feature online play for the PS4 game. I can believe that, certainly, and this may be the beginning of a whole era of seeing games like this that get remastered, or not even remastered, but re-released and ported, and then they're missing the multiplayer element. In a lot of ways, I imagine Uncharted 4's multiplayer, while liked by people who played it back in the day, would not actually be played nowadays, and it would be redundant and pointless to try and have that set up. A lot of games in Uncharted 4's era and earlier had multiplayer crammed into their product as a way of combating used game sales, whereas at this point I'm not sure anybody even cares about used game sales. So that may literally just not be a concern anymore.
Nice marksmanship.
So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see several games, probably not a ton, that are ported without the online component. And then there is that reevaluation that I've always done, frankly, when looking at whether I want to buy a game or not, is what is the single player aspect of this going to be? And for a while there were straight up review sites that were trying to review the single player and the multiplayer aspects, but I think for the most part that has been abandoned. And if a game is centric around a multiplayer game like Battlefield, it is almost always going to be reviewed from the perspective of what the multiplayer is like, whereas if it's centric around the single player aspect, it's then reviewed around what the single player aspect is. I think very few people would have cared how good the multiplayer in Bioshock 2 was if Bioshock 2 itself wasn't fairly good to play. In fact, that's probably a great example of something that shouldn't have had multiplayer, but did and was actually fairly good because of its unique art style and unique gameplay mechanics. It is stupid, frankly, that there isn't a Bioshock 2 revival of the multiplayer in particular, where that could have been its own separate free-to-play thing where people were still playing today. They could have at least kept the Bioshock name alive, and maybe it wouldn't have been much better than Fallout 76, but it would have been something. I think there's a lot more problems with Fallout 76 though. And of course this is just a rumor. It may very well be that multiplayer is in there, or multiplayer gets split out as a free-to-play thing, which also could be a new era, certainly, if they start just taking the multiplayer aspects out of games and putting them as their own free thing. That's what we're seeing with Halo Infinite right now, is that the multiplayer is, I think, at least for now, free.
Looks like I won.
It's definitely separate from the single player story. If anything, Halo Infinite seems like they are putting a lot of faith in their player base to actually want to pay and play the single player content. Speaking of multiplayer coming back, 6 years after it was shut down, PlayStation Home has been resurrected by fans. Players will soon be able to join public and private online lobbies again. I wouldn't be surprised if Sony shuts this down though, as a fan remake. And I'm not sure how many people really would want to do PlayStation Home, or ever did do it. You can see here there is a Uncharted 3 advertisement, which seemingly came out the same day as Skyrim. Wasn't 11/1/11 the day Skyrim came out? Interesting. But yeah, two different multiplayer things, although PlayStation Home is a different experience and not really a game. You also have this other advertisement for something called Okaboo, which I don't even recognize, and Cogs, which was like a cell phone game that I think came to consoles later. Yeah. In a lot of ways, this is like a VR walking around through a mall, which I don't know how many people would actually relate to or would want to actually walk around the mall. Oh, I mentioned, I think, that I watched Battlestar Galactica: The Plan. I briefly was considering watching Battlestar Galactica, the remake of the series, not the original Battlestar Galactica. But I don't think I'd actually do that. I was trying to find a justification to maybe go through all of that and watch it, but part of the problem is there was a prequel TV series called Caprica that's not available pretty much unless you buy Swedish DVDs or Blu-rays, because it's just never been released, and there's a whole bunch of movies tied into it. So, and it would be a long commitment. I've never really watched that series. It always looked like a very intense, interesting series, but it also feels like it gets fairly complicated. I did watch like the last episode or movie or whatever to wrap up the series, and I think the ending particularly was fairly disappointing, but I don't know what you could really have expected them to do. The military political intrigue of the Battlestar Galactica reboot, I think, is too heavily military. In a lot of ways, it feels like what Babylon 5 would have been if Babylon 5 had only been around the military aspect.
Ding dong! May happiness be with you. Break them.
Everything else, I think, about Star Galactica, as far as like religion or there really aren't any alien races, so they were fairly limited. There's literally
May the forest be at peace.
one enemy in all of the TV series and movies, and that's just Cylons.
Is that how you treat a lady?
So yeah, what I imagine I would have wanted to do with something like the Battlestar Galactica reboot would have been to introduce
God and demons.
a new alien race that at least made it a triangle. Like one of the things that I was thinking about while watching the movie would have been if they had revealed at halfway through the TV series that the Cylons actually had left for an outer rim far away from where the humans were and where their colonies were, and they had gone to an uncharted part of space, and then all of a sudden they were running into something that was pushing them back and threatening them, or just even an expanse they could not pass, then there would have been more of a reason for a machine for Cylons to come back and attack the humans,
Activating alpha threat.
even if it was just to
have made an enemy of me.
steal resources and such.
Stop it!
But
Stop it!
as far as I know, nothing like that ever happened. Yeah. Weirdly, in Battlestar Galactica, I think there is very little true religious belief amongst the humans, and far too much true religious belief amongst the robots, the Cylons. Like, it would have made a lot more sense if the second generation of Cylons, the ones that looked like humans,
The
were
hunt has
actually
only begun.
only
Say goodbye. Your time is
An option.
in an alliance with the first generation of Cylons, the mechanical Cylons. If they were not in line, if they were kind of, there was a lot more like actual physical infighting between them, then you'd have had your third faction. That would have made a lot more sense. So, but yeah, I don't think I'd ever really watch it. well, I would watch it
I do not
if
know what winds whisked me
they
here.
could make a like nice Blu-ray set. That would be something that would even get me to buy a new Blu-ray player, buy it and sit through it and watch it. Or if they just got it all on a streaming platform, that would probably be even better, because that's less commitment. But I probably would want to see like an abridged version of it. It's not like it's really that impactful. It still makes a lot more sense to go back and watch Star Trek or Star Wars one more time than it does to watch Battlestar Galactica. And sadly, there's not been any other sci-fi series that has come out recently that
This is our little
would
secret.
be really worth watching.
I do not know what winds whisked me here.
Everything just gets canceled is part of the problem. Even the original Star Trek got canceled, but there's just not enough fandom these days to keep people
You want to hunt? Be my guest.
keep shows on the air. Like
I won't
the
let
closest
you get
show
away. That beast is my
would have
savior.
been the Orville.
You want to hunt? Be my guest.
Like I think if the Orville,
I can fade completely.
which I don't think actually has been canceled, actually is going to have a third season, but it's been so delayed. I think if the Orville had not changed so many channels and been delayed, it would have eventually built up into something fairly good. But
This under control.
where by the time the next season of the Orville, if it does have a next season, I think it has one coming out on one of the direct streaming services.
Return to the earth.
It's going to be in a very different position as a parody of Star Trek now that there's effectively a cartoon parody of Star Trek made by the makers of the owners of the Star Trek license already airing, plus a couple other Star Trek things.
Maybe this time I can fade completely.
Hey, let's play.
Anyways, we're not getting through the video game news very fast, and today should be a fairly short day.
I do
I'm
not
not doing a lot of Black Friday shopping, but I am looking at the sales. Amazon Prime's lightning deals. I'm keeping an eye on them, but I don't think there's going to be much there. Frankly, the lightning deals and the Amazon Prime sales aren't that good. None of the other sales look that good right now on Black Friday, although in all fairness, this may just be a return to form of there not really being any online sales until Monday.
This is
And
the end.
there are people claiming that Saturday is Small Business Saturday, and you're supposed to, on top of going Black Friday and shopping at big Walmart conglomerate type stores, you're supposed to then go support small businesses on Saturday and then also spend money online on Monday. It's like, yeah, following this logic, there would be a special holiday for an entire month, if not year-round, to try and push people to constantly shop, and at a certain point that's just consumerism.
Stop it.
And of course there are boycotts and calls for boycotts, and I would say try to support boycotts as much as possible, but also you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before someone else. And if you're broke and can't afford to pay full price for some things, and you see a deal for something you were going to buy anyways and actually need, I'm not going to really blame you for if you buy something while it's on sale, even if people are calling for boycotts.
The hunt has only begun.
It is possible, well, maybe not as supportive, to partially support a boycott at least and just buy the bare minimum. That's
You stirred the
still
demon
going to
inside me.
like still going to affect the bottom line a little bit. Anyways, back to video game news. The former BioWare lead writer says the idea of a Mass Effect TV show makes him cringe. I don't think the former BioWare writer,
Nice
though,
marksmanship.
is really going to have anything to say with it. And in all fairness, I think Mass Effect in general, in a lot of places, was cringy. So making a TV show based on the concept of Mass Effect, I think it's probably a decent idea. If you were going to make something that was a Star Wars, Star Trek type TV show, and you wanted to put a name on it, getting a video game name like Mass Effect and the general universe of Mass Effect, I think starts very well. Because you already have established people, you have established cultures, you have established things. You can write around them if you don't want those people, those cultures to quite be exactly like the video games. You can take 90% of the good stuff and leave the 10% of the bad stuff. And frankly, you could have the entirety of the movie be barely anything like Mass Effect, and it still would probably sell better having the Mass Effect name on it. That's what a lot of movies and TV shows based on video games are, is that they're just trying to get that name recognition, and then they do something completely different. The Assassin's Creed movie, for instance,
My quarry won't escape that easy.
maybe shouldn't have been as close to the movies to the video games. Probably would have made a lot more sense if the Assassin's Creed movie got rid of the whole animus stuff and genetic memory stuff and just straight up was a story set in the past about an assassin. I frankly wouldn't have even been upset. It probably would have been a good idea if the Assassin's Creed movie was always set in the past, and then in the last scene where you could cut it out if it didn't play well, you could have the actor playing the person in the past then play a dual role of someone in the present coming out of a machine. And that would be the big twist and surprise to people who hadn't played Assassin's Creed, is that, oh no, this was a guy in the machine the whole movie and everything was a dream. And for people, fans of the video game, they would have assumed that to be the case, but wouldn't have been, still might have been shocked. Moving on, this performer, Steve Aoki, I don't know who he is performing a virtual Sonic themed concert this month, which he's an EDM, so electronic dance music artist and DJ. He kind of looks Asian, so that might explain why he's going with Sonic the Hedgehog, although I could also see him just memeing on Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know if this really is video game news, though. We got another quick disconnect, which is basically the only way we're winning with fairies at all. We could play a Bloodcraft, but Bloodcraft won't work any better than anything else. The cheapest Nintendo Switch Lite and OLED Black Friday console UK console deals are listed on Video Games Chronicles. If you're interested, check that out. Apparently, CD Projekt's president insists the company is not for sale. We plan to remain independent. Interesting. A modder has been improving GTA Trilogy's textures to make it look better. And yeah, in this case, I wouldn't even say look at the character and the textures on the characters. This isn't a one-to-one comparison, and you probably should do direct one-to-one comparisons of the image. But don't look at like the hair, the or the skin or the clothing. Look at the ground texture here compared to the ground texture here, which is darker, probably more true to life of what it would look like. It has more speckles on it. Arguably, maybe this uses more video RAM, but maybe that doesn't really matter. And then when you look at these concrete tiles, it's again more shading, a little bit darker, more speckles on it. Arguably, this does look like this is probably too many speckles right about here for concrete. And then you have, on this case, a darker wall where there's a lot less detail to see because of it being in darkness, where this green wall you can definitely see stains against the wall. This darker fence is harder to see than this fence. This is kind of a terrible comparison shot because you really would want to get into like these details and these textures, which maybe haven't been fixed or not. But at a certain point also, you can't really criticize a modder's attempt to improve a game when the actual creators of the game are doing such a bad job. Did such a bad job of releasing what was basically just a cell phone port and trying to sell it like it wasn't. It wasn't just a cheap, low effort release of a cell phone, of the cell phone ports. Video Games Chronicle has a review of a book here, Pac-Man Birth of an Icon. Which, okay, I guess check out that book if you're interested. Xbox says improving video capture quality and sharing is a priority. We know we still have work to do here. Which, yeah, there is definitely a desire, I think, to capture and stream video, even for console gamers. Still, I would say we may have hit a point where like kids have burned out on the idea of being streamers at this level, because it's been made fairly obvious to a lot of older kids, in particular, that that's not really a career path and you really can't succeed that, says the YouTuber who has pretty much proven for over 5 years that being a content creator is not really a career path and you can't succeed at it. Or most people can't succeed at it. A few small percentage, less than 1% of people succeed and get lucky. But I think outside of trying to be a YouTuber, people still want to share clips on occasion. Although in all fairness, if I was just playing video games, I don't feel like there are specific spots in every game where I would want to share the gameplay footage. In fact, I think very rarely, almost never, is there a spot in a video game where something really cool happens that I would want to share. But I probably would have said the exact same thing about Facebook or any social media site, and once you have that option, I imagine a lot of people would start taking people up on that option.
You just don't get it.
And then the final Video Games Chronicle article for today, probably, is CD Projekt believes Cyberpunk will be considered a very good game in the long run. As a quote, apparently they had a shareholders meeting. It'll sell for years, especially as hardware gets more powerful and we improve the game. I believe they've also changed the name. It wasn't a shareholder meeting, it was an interview. I don't think that they are referring to it as Cyberpunk 2077. Well, no, in this article they are. Yeah, I thought I saw an article, but maybe I misread it, where they were changing the name. Now would not be the time to change the name, though. Like, at a certain point, you could drop it down to Cyberpunk, which is what everybody calls it, or you could go to 2078 and bump it up a single number. That would also make some sense.
You must make the first move.
So when I evolve this and adds to
Where the dice
health,
fall depends on you.
it doesn't then activate its effect. It only activates its effect.
It's your throw.
Yeah, it only activates its effect if it is increased its attack or health by some other effect. Yeah, so evolving is not considered an effect. Interesting. Chrome updated, so theoretically there should be an easier way
Sounds about right.
to
About time we got started.
theoretically there should be an easier way in the future to find Chrome tabs. In reality, I'm not sure if there's going to be much of a difference. I didn't have the uBlock Origin enabled because I was shopping. So here we have a game on Steam. I think we already talked about it, Hiragani Detective. But that does give me an opportunity to show what I've got in my cart. But also I'm going to say I am definitely considering not buying anything now, and instead of buying, I don't understand why the Game of the Year edition is in the shopping cart, though. I may just buy all this stuff on the December sale instead. So some Lego Worlds DLC, which isn't really on sale. Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition, which I can only assume that by going to Game of the Year edition, it is cheaper to buy all of that than it is to simply take the DLC and add it all to the cart. Yeah, $13.99 versus the Game of the Year edition, $13.19. Yeah. And I don't think I need the Creation Club, which apparently is not even on sale. Yeah, that seems ridiculous, the way that's bundled and set up. But yeah, it is easier just to buy the game after being gifted so generously the base game by a fan. It's easier just to buy the Game of the Year edition a second time and cheaper than it is to just buy the DLC. But yeah, my goal is to eventually buy the Worms collection. Winnie the Pooh as a Disney kids game makes some sense.
What you need is a nice. What you need is a nice roaring flame.
It's your throw.
I suppose I lost some of my edge.
Hey, if I'd moved faster, I would have killed this guy. But whatever. Winnie the Pooh for $1.79, State of Mind for $1.99, since it's usually a $20 game, is the right price for that game. Iron Curtain as a point and click for $1.99. Bridge Constructor Portal Bundle for $2.86. The Stirring Pack for $1.99. And then I was thinking of getting Darksiders Genesis. The DLC for the Lego games, just so I have them, aren't even on sale. You have the Game of the Year edition of Fallout 4. Dragon Ball FighterZ, the Fighter Pass 2. There's a Fighter Pass 3, but I'm just trying to get all of them at a decent price before I even cover that game. This Daedalic Artist Selection Bundle gives me 3 games for $1.67, whereas if you were just to buy Candle or Silence, it would be more expensive to buy them individually. Path to Minosian is 99 cents, which is about the right price for that game. Garfield Kart Lasagna Bundle 1, which includes Garfield Kart Furious Racing, which is a sequel to another Garfield Kart game that I already own, is only $1.12. Camp W is 99 cents, which looks like a real good deal for that game, even if it kind of just ends. An Arcane 20th Anniversary Bundle gives you Dishonored, Death of the Outsider, and Dark Messiah of Might Magic for $9.59, plus Arcs Fatalis, which I don't even know. And then you have the Fallout 4 Season Pass, which both of those are in the cart. So I actually need to take one of those out. And that would give me up to $116, which is a lot less than the $300 that I've usually done. You can also see a lot of this is just mostly negative. And see this Automation, Wasteland Workshop, Far Harbor, Contraption Workshop, Vault Tech Workshop, and Nuka World, which, what is this? You have to have the base game of Fallout 4, and if you look at all of this, that would be all of these here. In all fairness though, Far Harbor is like the only one that people actually like. Nuka World is mixed. Automation is mixed. All of this is just DLC that should have been in the game by default. Let's see what the Creation Club actually is. Credits to be used in the Creation Club. That's why it's not included. And this includes Automation, Wasteland Workshop, Far Harbor, Contraptions Workshop, Vault Tech, and Nuka World. Yeah. So it literally is cheaper to not buy the fall season pass, but instead to buy the Game of the Year edition. Maybe that's because I already own the game that is an option. It sure does suck as an idea, though, that I would buy a game that I mostly already own a second time, particularly when you're talking about a game like Fallout 4. It would make a lot more sense to make sure I own Fallout New Vegas or everything from Fallout 3. And I would also say, I feel like Fallout 3 is a bigger game. Just has more content, better content than Fallout 4 does.
My quarry won't escape that easy.
and the DLC that came out for Fallout 3, I feel like was much more legitimate. This expands your gameplay and expands your experience DLC, whereas some of the things in Fallout 4, like automation, are things that should have just been added even in post-launch updates for free. Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Treachi. Did we talk about this already? I may have gone back a little bit. It looks like an RPG Maker game with no real interest. It's free, English only. Here we have Middle Ages jigsaw puzzles, which we can dismiss. $2.39, English only. Here we have Life in the Machine, which I think we talked about this. Yeah, we did. It's $2.09, English only, no interest there. Feral Flowers. Yep, this is another repeat. $5, English allegedly full audio. The Dawning. I went back too far. This looks like an asset flip horror game. Walking simulator, possibly. $24.99, way too expensive. English full audio. One thing I didn't do here is actually, and I didn't mention, I kind of conveniently mentioned that I didn't play any video games since Wednesday. Like, I thought about it, but yeah. Even if I am just being a hypochondriac and thinking that there might be something wrong with my eyes when there really isn't, I think I can fairly confirm that I have been waking up with a kind of light sensitivity when I wake up. I'm wondering if allergies or I'm just not producing enough tears while I sleep or something like that is happening. But yeah, I have never in the past had to turn down the brightness on my cell phone, for instance, when I wake up and look at it. But now I am definitely doing that. I'm sitting in the dark. Some of that is definitely to try and just rest my eyes, but some of that definitely also feels needed. It is possible that just up until this point in my life, I've been blowing my eyes out at just way too brightness, way too much light. I do have like probably somewhere around 600 or 700 watts of light bulbs, and I've turned off half my light bulbs and dim things. So that is a possibility, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that slight concern has affected whether or not I want to play video games, but it obviously hasn't really affected whether I watch TV or use my eyes in some other way. It's fairly difficult to do any activity without using your eyes, which just highlights how devastating having eyesight and losing eyesight would be. Let's see. This.
May the forest be at peace.
This.
Mankind's hatred is a curse.
This.
The hunt has only begun.
End their suffering.
And return. But yeah, I've been trying to take it slightly easy, but I need to schedule. I always say that over the weekend. I'll probably shop mostly over the weekend, although I'm going to be fairly conservative on what I actually buy. And I probably will play a little bit of video games, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't do too much of that. Okay. 1, 2.
Let's play.
Forced abandon me.
Didn't have enough to play this one.
Wither.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Kira Kira Monstars, which looks like it's a visual novel, very colorful. There are some anime girl models here that look similar to some famous anime characters, but I don't think they're actually supposed to have the license of anybody. Yep. This may not support English. Yeah. $17.09, Chinese, Japanese, full audio. Little monster girl, at least in this case. But, yep. English is not supported, so we can't do anything about it. Probably wouldn't have done much around it anyways. Here we have a game called Idle Raid, which is clearly a cell phone port. Free to play, English and Chinese, nothing there of interest. Let's try this again. 1, 2.
Let's play.
Just don't.
Attack here. 2. I guess this.
My melody set your wings free.
Do this. Do this.
Wither.
Do that. And return. This card is interesting because it doesn't say anything when it's evolved. It's just blank. When usually it says something there. Alright, well. If I do this, I can't really do anything else. If I do this, it's probably the right move.
I'm falling apart?
Do that. That.
Let's play.
And in return. Here we have a game that's just an Asian characters. Looks like it's a tower defense Chinese game, which we don't get a lot of those really. English not supported, $1.69, Chinese only. Here we have a game called Sniper Road, which looks very asset flippy.
So, we'll do this the hard
There might be
way.
a game you could make like this if you just had more environment textures. Just a procedurally generated, probably not towers or buildings, but instead hills, where it's just sniper versus sniper. Still might not be much of a game compared to something like Fortnite though, because most games could be sniper versus sniper in a lot of cases, but then a lot of people don't want to play as snipers, shooting other snipers. Like, the ideal thought is not for a sniper to kill another sniper, it's for a sniper to kill other high target assets.
Don't forget to snag some merch. I wasn't good enough.
This,
Let's play.
then this,
I take so much for that axe.
and this.
Let's play.
Here we have a game on Steam called Little Island, which looks like some VR game with cats and dogs and some other things you can do.
Nice
I'll put this on the fall list, but it does seem like it's a fairly ambitious VR game. $14.99, English, Japanese. This actually is well received. I would be pleasantly surprised. Here we have a game called The Expanse, probably having nothing to do with the sci-fi TV show called The Expanse, which is another sci-fi TV show I've never watched and probably would never
My
watch.
quarry won't escape that easy.
It looks like garbage, the game does. Early access, $9.99, English only. It's, I think, more than slightly just a personal hang-up that anything that airs on Sci-Fi or that is being published or funded by the Sci-Fi channel immediately gets dismissed by me because I know it will be canceled. If anything, it may not get canceled. It may just take a decade and a half to really release it. The only exception there is like the Magicians sci-fi series managed to go 5 seasons, although in all fairness, even then it only managed to go 4 seasons with its main character, and then they changed who the main character was. So yeah, although I guess I really didn't learn my lesson even at that, because I'm still watching like Flash on the CW, and so I'm watching low budget DC comic TV shows. And if I'm willing to watch The Flash, for instance, then I should be willing to watch a sci-fi show for on the same aspect, just to say, well, this probably will get canceled and this probably will be bad, but I'm willing to waste my time on it. I don't know why I'm willing to waste my time on those things. They're doing a mini-series with Flash called Armageddon, and the big twist is that one of the main characters is dead, and it was revealed halfway through, and it definitely felt like something was off in that everything was changing with the Flash. I think they're wrapping it up, and but I also wouldn't be surprised if they came back for yet another season, because I thought they had already finished the Flash. But yeah, there was clearly a main character that was not showing up, and I had just stupidly assumed what was going on was that main character had retired as an older actor, and they just hadn't brought him back, and so they would have said he was retired the whole time or that he was dead, and it just didn't really matter to me. So then they make this big twist reveal where the Flash himself all of a sudden is told that this character died 6 months ago and that he gave the eulogy at his funeral, and he doesn't remember any of that. Isn't as impactful as it should have been. Particularly since, like, time travel and the manipulation of universes and changing reality has happened multiple times in the Flash already, so it's fairly it's not really surprising that somebody might be erased from history and be dead, and then the Flash would remember a different version of that. And everything is being teased, I think, to a reveal that the Armageddon miniseries is actually set in a different Flash universe that is the Injustice universe, where the Justice League becomes the bad guys. And this is the beginning of how the Flash becomes a bad guy. It wouldn't be a terrible thing if it did turn out that all of the CW DC comics shows are set in the Injustice universe, and everybody turns into bad guys, and that's how they just kind of wrap up and cancel all those series. Batwoman, which is 2 different Batwomans at this point, Supergirl, Superman would be weird because they just started that series, and I assume it's all in the same universe now. Last I checked.
I serve in hopes of a better tomorrow.
The problem with that is you have that is effectively known as the Arrowverse, and the Arrow TV series has already done its thing, and they've already set them up so that the Arrow characters are good guys. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for the Justice League to turn bad. Black Lightning is, I don't even know if that show's really still airing, but that would kind of suck too if they all became the bad guys. So you'd almost have to say what they're showing you is just Barry Allen becoming a bad guy, and not every single Justice League person becoming a bad guy. But had they planned that out from day one, had it always secretly been that the Arrow, the Flash, and the Superman, everything on CW was actually people on their way to becoming the bad guys. And in the Injustice universe, and Earth 2, I don't know if Earth 2 is the Injustice universe or not, but if they had planned that out for years and they had made a decade-long TV series to show that reveal at the end, that would have been very bold. Kind of stupid, but very bold. It's something you would do for something like The Flash, because The Flash is not being well received as it continues to go on. It wouldn't be a smart move if The Flash had been a major success and gone 100+ episodes for syndication, and you would want to re-air that, because nobody's going to want to watch The Flash in reruns, if you even care about syndication and reruns these days. I'm not sure people do, if the big surprise at the end is that they're actually the bad guys. That's something you could do more in movies. Anyways, back to video games. We have a game called EOS 27, which looks like nothing. I'm really just rambling today. This game is free, English, allegedly full audio. I severely doubt that. Looks like nothing of interest. 100,001 Jigsaw, Earth Chronicles 9, we can easily dismiss. English, French, German, Russian, $2.99. Fight bots, I think we can fairly quickly dismiss. Just looks like asset flips. $7.99, English, again, allegedly full audio. There is the idea of like a Metabots game without the Metabots name, where you could do something like this, but you wouldn't, in your screenshots, unless it was an asset flip, have them on the moon, and then on a battleship, and then on fighting a dragon. Like, it's just all over the place in these backgrounds, showing that they did not care and they just asset flipped a bunch of garbage. Right now is also probably a terrible time to have games coming out on Steam. Like, I imagine new games right now are not being promoted versus games being on sale. Here we have a game called Fly or Die, which looks like it's a side-scrolling shooter of no interest. Almost feels like you're flying through a night air raid of England during the World War I or II with the shadows, but I don't really think that is what's going on here, because I don't think the tanks and everything are the right shape and silhouettes for that era. flyer die is 59 cents English and Russian. No to that. Here we have PCI, Public Crime Investigation, which apparently is a full motion video game. Full motion video game. There might be something here. It's $19.99. They're comparing it to Her Story. Somehow it's online co-op. That makes no sense and requires a third-party account. 6 investigations, 6 games in 1. Interesting. It's kind of crazy to have 6 different stories in one game. They must be fairly short. I guess that is that they're telling you straight up the duration of some of these. Like, you've got one that's 30 minutes. And frankly, I wonder if these aren't just straight up videos. This one's an hour and 30 minutes. This one's an hour and 30 minutes. And then they just ask you to guess who the killer is at the end. 2 hours and 30 minutes. 4 hours is the last one. Mortal speed dating. It's an online detective game. You must have a good internet connection. You need to create an account. The account allows you to save your progress and play on other platforms by having access to investigations purchased here. You chat with your team using the app of your choice: WhatsApp, Skype, Discord. No, I think this is no in-game chat. I think this is garbage. Infrequent/mild nudity. Infrequent/mild everything. I do want to see some reviews of this, but the high resolution images,
no one else
I feel like, are hiding what I think is basically barely a game. I really think you are going to have some supplemental material and mostly just watch a video or a collection of videos. I got another disconnect there,
My blade has paid your passage
which
into
means
the
we can
afterlife.
actually start playing at this point. Now we can just play something we think we might actually win with. Yeah, but that definitely doesn't feel like something that is a winning combination. Gamatsu, I think we already talked about Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Burst Forth, launching May 24th in Japan. This is based off of an anime that may be a little late to the party. Video games based on video game animes are probably late to the party. I am certain we talked about Happiness Sakura Celebration coming to the Switch on March 24th in Japan, because I remember looking at this image. I think we probably had also talked about Dragon Quest X offline details, detailing the Puka Land continent. So we can close that one. So I guess our big news here, let's play first. Our first big new news is AI the Somnium Files Nirvana Initiative box art. It has been revealed due out in 2022. This is, I suppose, a sequel to AI the Somnium Files, which I would definitely have to check to figure out whether this was a visual novel game or something else. It's coming to PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC via Steam in 2022. Not PS5 or Series X or S, though. Which I think there probably is a point where we're going to have to look at the numbers as far as how many games this generation are still releasing for the previous generation of games, of consoles, or at least focusing on the previous generation of consoles as much as the current generation of consoles. Arguably, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series isn't really doing a lot to differentiate itself as a new generation, instead of just being a incremental step up and improvement. But yeah, we definitely have seen a lot of games that are just PS4, just Xbox One, because of backward compatibility, particularly when you're talking more niche games, things that are not likely to be AAA games that a large percentage of people are going to buy, like visual novels, although the numbers of visual novel sales I think are still through the roof, particularly in Japan, but they are approaching zero in the West. Let's see. Next we have Chaos Head Noah and Chaos Child, double pack announced for the Switch, coming out February 24th in Japan. Two more visual novels, and showing approaching zero here, and we have a character that's just straight up naked in this anime cover art. So I probably shouldn't click the play button here on this trailer, even if it is blurred. I assume the blurring is still working after the latest update. Actually, it was very strange to relaunch Chrome because of an update and have them open up a new tab and talk about new features. That's not something Chrome has done before. Yeah, I'm skipping through this trailer as far as Chaos Head Noah. It looks like it's a very violent, bloody murder mystery, weird visual novel. Which definitely could be interesting. And then there is a teased part at the end where several of the anime girls lose their clothing and are in their underwear, including a very fat, by anime standards, character losing their underwear. And maybe that's being blurred out even more as a joke. I think it is.
This is how you do fireworks.
Yeah. Yeah, the underwear is not blurred out for most of the characters, and then the fat lady, the underwear is blurred out as a joke in the trailer. But yeah, I think you'd have a hard time particularly saying in the aspect of anime that when you see a fat character, that is a character that is being drawn fat for a very specific reason, and almost always that reason is to make fun of the fat character, or make the fat character be immediately depicted and recognized as being disgusting or ugly or different in some way.
Damn rain.
Let's see. Do we do this? Or do we do this? I think you do this first. That gets you started. Let's see. Komatsu has the King of Fighters 15 character Angel trailer and screenshots. And I've very specifically gone for a cleavage shot here on this character, very much focusing on cleavage. Although she is also wearing basically a bikini bottom with what you would probably describe as chaps, although at a certain level I think you might just describe them as jeans that have been intentionally cut away to show very little, to show as much inner thigh as possible, which is an interesting way certainly to focus or highlight the inner thighs of a character. Character-wise and fight style-wise, she looks like she's probably a goofy, fun-loving character from the looks of it, from what the trailer's showing. Fight style-wise, I really can't speak as far as if she's more of a kicker or a puncher or whatever, since I'm just not like educated at all as far as fighting games. It really undercut my argument that I can win with like this Havencraft deck when I actually lose with this Havencraft deck as much as I lose with anything else. Let's see. Komatsu has the Hyperdimension Neptunia Sister vs. Sisters teaser trailer details and screenshots. This was announced just a couple days ago, and so now we're getting more details. Here you have kind of a more traditional Neptunia character, and I assume the sisters are actually like companion characters that were introduced to the Neptunia characters or transformations of them. These screenshots are not doing a great job of centering the images. Let's see, do we have an actual trailer we can look at? I half expect the sisters to be like little fairy characters that are way smaller. Or could be that these are the sisters and it's just that the original screenshots drew them. I felt like it drew them a lot younger looking. Here they really don't look that much younger looking than it, so maybe they went a little bit further than they were expecting with the concept arts, and then they back down on it. See, that kind of looks a little shorter, a little younger, and maybe the final product is going to be closer to the average depictions of the Neptunia characters. Because yeah, these concept art images definitely do look a little bit shorter, a little bit younger, a little bit skinnier, and it would be weird if this is just a new artist's interpretation of the Neptunia characters. And this is just how they're going to be depicted going forward. I think that would be a little strange. But it certainly would be a way to potentially reboot the Neptunia series. And I guess if you know nothing about the Neptunia series, it is worth mentioning that these are anime girls that are supposed to represent video game consoles, so it's a little confusing if they get redrawn or if they look younger. What does that really mean? If like one of the characters is supposed to represent the Famicom, for instance, if that is the case, and then it's drawn younger, is that mean then the story is supposed to take place at an earlier period in which the Famicom would have existed? Probably not, because I don't think they actually have the story in any way really relate to the consoles. It's more just the original concept or gimmick was that you would have a bunch of anime girls that are artistically based off of video game consoles. In the same way that the Ruby characters are based off of Red Riding Hood, Snow White, and I don't even know what the black and the yellow are based off of. I think the yellow might be based off of Rapunzel, and the black may be based off somebody else. I don't even know. Moving on, we have a game called Motorbike Traffic Splash, which looks like it's just an infinite runner, infinite driver of no interest. 59 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Pussy Palace, which seems not to be an adult game. Seems to be jigsaw puzzles with pussycats images, which it's a fairly cheeky name to call your game. 59 cents, English only. You can definitely see that they are memeing here because the only achievement is an anime girl, and that wouldn't really make sense if they were legitimately just fans of kittens. Here we have a game called The Ball Flow First Approach, which looks like nothing, just a physics game experiment. Barely a game. $1.69, English only. Here we have 2048_ST, which looks like a low effort 2048 game, free to play, Chinese only. I suspected it was Chinese only, but I was waiting to say that. Bakery Biz Tycoon is mostly negative already, so we can dismiss that. Also, it doesn't really look like anything that would interest me. 524, several languages. Here we have a game called Astral Space, which looks like nothing. $4.99, English only. Here we have Cursed House 10 Match 3 Puzzles, which looks like just a collection of Match 3 games and some other games. $6.99, English only. Let's play this. Now, this one would do 4 damage at the next turn. Here we have a game called Earthquake Escape. There almost is an idea there where if you were in the middle of an earthquake, would you know where to run? But seemingly here, you have these exclamation points where you shouldn't go during an earthquake, but the screen is not shaking. And clearly this is just a low effort garbage game. And it's not really explaining to you why you wouldn't want to get next to an appliance where an appliance oven door might fall and hit you in the head, or the entire oven might fall on you. Getting in between 2 recliners may be a little risky, particularly for a kid, but not that. Seemingly you also lose if you go into a room and then turn around and leave the room. This is trying to be an educational tutorial game, but clearly it's really a money laundering game at $199. English and Chinese only. I mean, really, it is just so obviously an aspect of money laundering in that case. Or just, if not money laundering, just being completely disassociated with the reality of what a game should cost or the quality of a game. to the point where you shouldn't be doing business with people who are that crazy. Let's see. Here we have a game called VR Basketball Shooting Practice, which frankly I'm surprised there aren't more VR shooting practice free throw shot games, but this one doesn't look particularly good. $1.19 is way too cheap for a VR game. Claims to support a lot of languages also. Noted that. Here we have one that's in Chinese only and looks like a huge text garbage game. 99 cents, Chinese only. Here we have a game called The Adventures of Sis Harpic, which is too long of a name. Sis Harpic. Looks like it's just a generic platformer of no real quality. $14.99, English only. Okay.
This is how you do fireworks.
Let's see.
What is this weird feeling?
Gamatsu has My Heroes One Justice 2's DLC character Present Mike announced. I assume the break here, and where the comma should be, is the game is My Heroes One's Justice 2. Not that this is the second DLC characters, or that there are two DLC characters named Present Mike being announced. Heaven Burns Red has been delayed to February of 2022 in Japan. I don't recognize this game at all. Which, if anything, that's just another indication of how these games get announced and then they immediately get delayed. And
Damn rain.
any effort they put into like hyping people up and getting them interested in the game gets flushed down the toilet because there's the inevitable delays. And it's not just because of COVID or anything like that. This has been happening for years. It's just a standard way in which they do things. And I don't know why people don't budget for that, or maybe people actually do budget and schedule for delays and there's just more delays on top of that. This game does look like it's just a JRPG with anime girls. Looks like it's kind of heavily visual novel too in its dialogue, but each of these characters do look fairly unique. I don't know if they're supposed to represent maybe different countries or what, because like this hat looks fairly Russian, the girl with the dot looks fairly that could be American here, the blonde with superhero capes. So this might be like superheroines from around the world. This could be UK. The one in red might be, let's see, this might be Chinese, China, UK, US. No, this is China, India, Russia. So maybe she's just straight up Japan or Asia in general. But yeah, I think that's what they're doing there. It's not a terrible thought.
My raging flames have got your back. My raging flames have got your back.
Let's see, ESRB has the rating of T for teen for blood, gore, language, partial nudity, and violence for Babylon's Fall. Which, okay. Let's see if we can
I envy you.
make this look a little bit better. Get rid of that. Sometimes there's hidden elements on a page. And the hidden elements on a page might affect how things look. Although, fairly rarely do they actually. I don't think there's anything else I can get rid of. So this little white part here is just going to be there. Usually there's a banner there, and maybe I should take that, like show the banner instead. Says it has no interactive elements, which I assume means online. ESRB also has the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, rated teen for blood, language, use of alcohol, tobacco, and violence. It too is being labeled as having no interactive elements, which does imply that's probably online and it doesn't have online elements. The romance visual novel Okago Cinderella is coming to PS4 and Switch on March 31st in Japan. Which, okay. This is the kind of barest of announcements to start off. It's these announcements in particular that should be delayed. Like, delay this 3 months and start your advertising campaign much later. I think part of the problem, though, is that in Japan, particularly fans of the visual novel games, do pre-order games, do buy them as soon as they're announced. And hype culture has been a big thing, certainly in Japan, so I wouldn't be surprised if visual novel creators, makers of games, know their audience better than I know their audience, which is probably true, almost certainly true, and that they know they will get more sales by hyping up a game and announcing it very early, because maybe 90% of their sales or 60% of their sales all do happen the day a game is just announced and put into the system of storefronts, and the delays don't matter at that point because people have just pre-ordered it. Certainly the Western world of video games would love for that to be the case, to get 90% of their sales the day they announce a game pre-ordered, and the constant refrain is don't pre-order games for that, amongst many other reasons. The Kiss trilogy is coming to Switch on March 31st in Japan, which I don't know what the Kiss trilogy is. I guess it's Hotch Kiss, Kiss Bell, and Kiss Ato. Which, yeah, don't really know anything else. AI Kiss 3 Cute for PS4 and Switch launches March 25th. I assume this is not part of the Kiss trilogy. AI is I believe the Japanese word for love, so you're having a loving kiss there, not just a friendly kiss. Yeah, I think this is from a different developer. Let's see. And Cute is probably the censored version of AI Kiss Sexy for the PC version. Yeah. So, interesting. This is another case where the PlayStation version, in this case a PlayStation 4 version of the game, seems to be getting censored while the PC version is not. Here we have a game on Steam called EQDrive.io, which, well, it looks fairly nice. It's not much of anything. Like, if anything, it feels like a simulation of just driving a regular car on a regular road. Although This is hardly what you would consider a regular road where you potentially could fall off a cliff. $11.99, third-party EULA, English only. I don't think there's anything in there to put in the fall list. Here we have a game called Indirection, which looks like it's probably a puzzle platformer. It's got like teleportations and portals. Seems like you probably don't control the direction you're moving, and so you have to figure out how to bounce yourself around by touching panels. This is kind of a concept that would really only make sense as a mini game more than anything else. A runaway train like mini game or experience. It's not something I would want to do for the entirety of a game. $2.79 English only. Let's see. Okay. Well, we can do this. And heal. We can do this.
You crossed the line.
And we can do this. Okay, we have a game called SGS Hia Safari, which apparently is some kind of turn-based World War I war game. Do I think there's something here I really want to play, though? As somebody who's not really a fan of war games anyways. Yep. I feel like in some cases I just throw my hands up and say, well, I'm going to have to let Mop Rule decide for me. This is $21.24. Several languages being supported here. And I think that's what I'll do here. So I'll just put this on the follow list, see what the reviews are, see if there's some way in my mind I could justify playing a game that I really have no interest in. Here we have a game called Gladiator About to Die, which I guess would be true for most gladiators. It looks interesting. Is it a multiplayer game or is it a single player game? Single player, English, German, early access. Put it on the fall list. The danger certainly around something like this is that you could fairly easily just buy some assets and put half of a game's worth of effort into it and make something that looks fairly decent like this, because when you're creating a game about a gladiator, you're mostly going to have fighting happening in small arena areas, so you don't have to be as ambitious as a RPG game where you go to different areas with different monsters you're fighting and different elements like that.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
Let's see. Next we have a game called My Cashy Side Job at Lost and Found in the Subway of Million Person Lost City, which is just way too long of a title. Like, it feels like it's a Western visual novel clone that is trying to feel like it's being translated from some Japanese title, and that's why it's so long. But looking at this animation style and the characters, there's just nothing here of real interest. It's $2.54. It's Russian, so I guess maybe it is legitimately being translated from Russian to English, but then it doesn't support English, so why even have a Russian translated title? Why not just have straight up Russian words here?
Like a fallen leaf.
Next we have a game called Spin City, which is a slot machine game. Does it have in-app purchases? Free to play, English only. Well, if it doesn't have in-app purchases and it's single player only, I think this might be a very good option for if you just want to play like casino games. I'm gonna put this on the fall list, although in all fairness, it's kind of pointless. In all fairness, it seems like there's no reason to cover a game if it's free. What's crazy about this is it says it's a simulator of elite casino full games, full of secrets where you can fully plunge into the world of excitement, try your luck, enjoyment, elegant design, make risky bets, feel free to spin the roulette wheel and win in real time. And then down here it says it'll make your most unexpected and hidden desires come true. Let's come over and play.
Smiles are
First.
the best medicine.
And then it says from the first minutes you'll have to make an important choice on which everything will depend. Your decision cannot be the wrong one. It'll determine the course of the game. Are you ready to take the risk? Remember, there's no turning back. This seems like a very weird ad copy description.
My blade is autumn. I am the fallen leaf.
I mean, it really feels like this very well may not actually be a casino game, and that there is a secret hidden game inside of this, and you would have to play. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it literally is just casino games and it's ridiculous ad copy, and they are
My crimson blade will
maybe
strike
trying to
you
trick
down.
people like me who are more contemplative into thinking there might be a Frog Fractions 3 or something like that in a game like this. You can see that the developer and the publisher are just labeled as Spin City also.
I envy you.
But there is also a possibility that there is a secret game in there and nobody ever plays Spin City and finds it. Here we have a game called Doomday, which looks like it's just a kind of low quality first person shooter. $7.99, English full audio. Oh, I did want to mention, I looked up the game Hugo's House of Horrors, which is an old point and click game. Maybe it's not even a point and click game, it may be a text only game, adventure game that I played when I was younger. And I was very shocked to see that it came out in like 1990. Because I generally describe a lot of games as being 1990s games. And I think maybe there was significant range of quality between games that were like cheap, low effort games for 1990 and games that are AAA games for PC in 1999. It might just be a very large, different range there, but yeah, I probably am also just misusing the phrase a 1990s game, and should probably call half of the games that I say look like they're from the 1990s, they probably are from the 2000s, which, yeah, I imagine in my mind early 2000s and early 1990s are about the same. It all just merges together. And certainly games I played when I was a kid do kind of merge in my mind, so I'm not 100% sure if I played a game when I was 12 or 14 or 10 that all would just kind of blend together in a mush.
Heart is a garden pearl.
I suppose kids these days would maybe have Steam logs or something if they were playing on PC to be able to go back and say, actually, I know exactly when I played this game. It was on these days for this amount of time. Of course, that will get used against them as far as their screen time limitations more than it would help them. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Tetris, which just looks like jigsaw puzzles with generic images. Yeah, 89 cents, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Really, these are the kind of images that you could probably just steal off the internet. I mean, there's really no consistency in theme or subject, and they don't particularly look like the types of images that you would pick for a puzzle. Here we have a game that's all Asian characters. It looks like it's probably either a Chinese or a Japanese shoot 'em up.
Be gone.
Looks like a Toho clone, so I'd think Japanese, but it looks bad, so I'd think Chinese. $9.99, Japanese. Here we have a game called Cute Honey Bunny Girl, which looks like it might be an adult game, but it's not tagged as having any of that content. Oh, it definitely is an adult game. What do you do in this game? It's a strategic tower defense game. Interesting. $3.79, Japanese full audio. At a certain level, a tower defense game that is lewd almost makes sense. Okay, I kind of see it now. That you're probably stopping just the bunny girl would be my guess. From getting from point A to point B in these kind of unique scenes. See if I can actually see how it plays in the video.
The enemy has come, Mother.
Pay thy reverence. Heaven demands it.
Yeah,
It won't be long now.
the scenes in the backgrounds I can immediately see
Divine
for a tower defense
judgment
game are too detailed, so they're going to visually get in the way of actually trying to play a game, but I don't think that's what they're really trying to do here. So in a funny way, you're kind of not, I think, so much trying to really set up a tower defense as much as you're trying to just create a bunch of speed bumps that would stop a single character or trip up a specific character. I'm not even sure if the character actually is going from a starting point to an end point as much as she's just walking around in loops until you defeat the bunny girl. They really are just merging a low effort tower defense game with an asset flipped bunny girl. Looking at this trailer, yeah, it definitely does not look like anything worth playing. It's very poor quality.
You crossed the line.
So yeah, I would have to say Cute Honey Bunny Girl is not a game worth putting on the follow list, even though it is 71% positive. Let me look at the reviews. She's apparently a succubus in a bunny girl outfit, or there is a succubus character. Apparently the language is not 100% complete. There's no tutorial in the game. There's a ton of negative comments. Most people can't even get past past the first level. There's more negative reviews showing up than positive ones of the few game reviews that have been selected. Although arguably, if I was a bit more paranoid, I might wonder if they are actually highlighting the negative reviews and putting them up above the fold. The link that says view more. But I suspect that's not really the case in this instance. I imagine it is just a garbage game. Moving on, we have a game called Heroes of Xanforth, which just looks like another RPG game. We can easily dismiss. $4.99 English only. Here we have Overlord, nobody no victory better than me, which that's not spelled. That should be nobody knows victory better than me. Looks like it's a cell phone game or an asset flip thing. Kind of both, actually. Cell phone game with this user interface. I'd think maybe asset flip with this 3D model, which does not really match this character image. Free to play with in-app purchases. I think we can say no to that. We have Sven's Sudoku Pad, which I think we can probably say no to this. Play your own Sudokus in Cracking the Cryptic's beloved puzzle app. Cracking the Cryptic is a YouTuber that does Sudokus, so this might be somewhat useful as an app for $2.99. So I'll give it a follow and see. There is something very interesting in the fact that YouTubers have kind of succeeded in making Sudoku a little bit more popular than it probably should be, and then really embracing the Steam Direct concept and putting Sudoku collections on Steam and Sudoku games on Steam. If anything, in most cases,
Is fighting and despair all you know?
games and Steam Direct games in particular have been garbage, and we haven't seen an instance of a lot of really small independent creators, people who may not even be video game creators for their first job, being able to list something where people normally could download it. Almost all the Sudoku games really could have been 5 years ago just released as a direct download on a website, and that would have been the standard way of doing it. It's still pretty much the standard way of doing things these days. So maybe we'll see a shift to more people putting things on Steam for Steam Direct, just to save themselves the bandwidth and make it easier to find the games. And that might be a good thing, but it's going to be a good thing in a massive pile of poop, because we still have a ton of garbage, low effort games being released.
Well, on to the next project.
Here we have a game on Steam called Space Hoarders Inc., which looks like nothing of interest. $10.19 English only. Suppose I should say I also was somewhat thinking that I was not even going to stream today, because I literally woke up around 8 a.m., was thinking about streaming, got tired, went to sleep again, woke up again, thought, oh, it's fairly late now, I probably won't stream, and nearly fell asleep again. This game Mistake looks like nothing of interest. 59 cents, whole bunch of languages. One of the things though with Steam Direct is that if Steam was just a software website instead of being a video game website, or if there's an equivalent to a Steam Direct for software websites, which I still would kind of want it to be Steam. There probably are a decent number of softwares out there that should be on Steam, and like it's fairly difficult these days to find an application, like particularly like a Windows application that you want to install without being, particularly if you don't know the name, without being like inundated with a whole bunch of advertisement based results that are just trying to sell you the one that paid for the most advertising versus finding a software that's actually going to be useful or good. Although, in all fairness, most people don't even need Windows PCs at all unless you're gaming, so you rarely are going to actually run into cases where you actually need to install anything at all or look for new software.
Damn rain.
I mostly have all of the solutions I think I need already installed, both on PC and on my cell phone. I don't go looking for new apps. At least not until I start working on a project and then realize that there's now a problem I would want to solve. Okay, is there anything we can do here that would save us?
I'm already a proper lady, you know. You were done for. I've got all the magic Is that how you treat a lady?
We'll just leave this and see if we can get him to disconnect out of frustration. Gamatsu has the Famitsu sales updated. So, let's see. Pokemon Brilliant Shining Pearl combined is taking the top 1 spot, followed by Mario Party Superstars. Battlefield 2042 still sold very well, followed by Shin Megami Tensei. Battlefield PS5 combined would be how much? 46,000. Still not anywhere close to the massive number of sales for Pokemon, even if you cut it in half, but it would put it in the second space. Clearly, you should really just look at the over 1 million units sold compared to less than 50,000 units sold and just ignore the rest of the sales chart. They don't even matter on the scale of it. Switch still selling way more than anything else. When you combine this, you have over 150,000 units between the OLED, the light model, and the original model of the Switch, and then barely 4,000 sold of the PS5. The Xbox Series X and S are still climbing the ladder very well, and you're not getting basically any sales at all for the PS4 and the PS5 digital editions. Although availability may be low for the digital edition, I would kind of assume that the availability wouldn't be that low for the PS4. It's being doubled by the 2DS LL, and that's probably not being made anymore. So, yeah. Any week you see the sales numbers going up for the Xbox Series, or even being in the middle of the list, is a good week for Xbox. But you have to be careful not to make a crazy assumption that means the next generation of Xbox is going to actually compete against the Nintendo Switch. It may be a case that the next generation of consoles are just whatever the next Nintendo thing is, and then the next Microsoft thing, with the PlayStation not even factoring in. But even in that case, I think Nintendo will still severely outsell. We have a game DNF Duel Berserker trailer. DNF Duel as in did not finish, I assume. This is one of these high animation fighting games from, I believe, Arc System Works, from the looks of the visuals. Yeah. Developers are Neopol and Arc System Works and Iding, 3 different companies being published by Nexion. Which that doesn't sound particularly good to have 3 different people working on it. A game called Musicus for PS4 and Switch launches March 24th in Japan. It's a rock and roll visual novel. Okay. They've cropped this image to not show the heads of any of the characters except for the girl. That's interesting.
Is fighting and despair all you know?
Time for me to prove myself.
Utaru Mono 20th anniversary title Monochrome Mobius Toki no Takai was announced. I think we had already talked about that. We don't really have much here. I did check out an Utaru Mono game on Steam, and it does look like it is a kind of standard JRPG series that, even if it has been going for 20 years, I don't think would specifically fall under a category where I would need to cover it first or anytime soon. If I was going to get into covering JRPGs, I think Dragon Quest games would make a lot more sense, or Ni no Kuni. And I've already bought a whole bunch of Neptunia games, so it makes a lot of sense to actually play the games you bought. River City Saga 3 Kingdoms for Switch launches December 16th in Japan. This is another one of these River City games, although in this case it seems like it's set more in the past as a beat 'em up game. Yeah, I also expect at some point somebody's going to give me some kind of feedback on the blurring of videos. I could probably just disable it until I get another 500 subscribers, which may be never, because it doesn't really even matter if somebody content IDs my videos now, because they're not monetized anyways. But yeah, I don't want to encourage people doing false content IDs, so it's definitely a personal, emotional choice more than a financial choice, because there is no financial incentive of blowing out the videos. There is a safety and YouTube family friendliness incentive, but I'm not worrying too much about that. Let's see, a game called Magatsu Barai has Trial Movie Volume 1 gameplay.
Hey, let's play.
Which, okay. I have a collection of different characters, a black-winged and white-winged angel character, and then seems like some human characters. This might be a ghost character. This is like 18 minutes, and it looks like the vast majority of this is just visual novel text. Oops. This was the one where she just straight up loses her clothes when she transforms. And I stepped on that landmine twice in 2 streams. As an actual game though, doesn't look particularly that interesting, even as a visual novel. Let's see. Next, we have a game called Magician's Dead Force of the Soul. Second trailer and screenshots.
No! Stop!
Seems to be a lot of characters here. I don't know what kind of game it is. A action game, I would like action third-person shooter using magic. There might be something to that. It's an interesting attempt, to say the least. I guess the question would assume though that it's player versus player. It could just be a single player game though. And looking like a Japanese game, I would almost assume that it is actually a single player game and that you're just fighting bots over and over again, which I don't know if too many people would be impressed by that.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Need to hurry up and wrap up. I'm getting sleepy or dizzy or just uncomfortable. I've hit 3 different reasons why I can barely go 3 hours. Atelier Sophie 2, The Alchemist of a Mysterious Dream, has its Ramizel Erlenmeyer trailer. So another character trailer. I'd say just check it out. What's funny is, why is this thumbnail here blurry? My effects shouldn't blur out like that. Let's see, we have a game on Steam called Albert and Camille's Little Lily Adventure, which looks like it's probably just a poorly pixelated RPG. Free, several languages. I think we can say no to that. Let's see. That was the wrong one to give it to. Here we have a game on Steam called Fishing at Lotus Lake with a robot for really no reason. It's being called a life sim clicker game. It definitely looks like an asset flip game. The fishing environment looks fine. The fishing gameplay mechanic looks bad. Everything else looks bad. $2.39, a bunch of languages. We can say no to that. Here we have a game called Mage Run, which, yeah, I don't think there's anything here of interest. $4.49, several languages. Here we have a game called Ancient Spider, which looks like it's just a Chinese mobile game port. $1.39, English and Chinese. Hit this. Hit this. Hit this. In turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Fatal Pause, which seems to be a joke visual novel starring a cat, and then everything else is in silhouette. Yeah, I don't think there's a game here worth playing. $2.39, English only. Thought about it for a second. Here we have a game called Castle Point, which looks like garbage. early access, $4.49 English only. We have been seeing a slight decrease in games labeled early access, which that's nice, but still far too many games being labeled as early access when they're the types of games that should either be completely finished on day one when you first list it and launch it, or you have games that really should be in early access and they're not labeled as early access, which is frankly just as bad. Here we have a game called Color Ball, although in most cases they look like they're finished games, they're just bad games and they're not labeled as early access. But Color Ball is an example of that, I would say. $3.74. Looks finished, but looks bad. Or at least mostly finished, as much as I could guess. Okay, let me do this one to heal this. Then you do this.
It looks like I'm
Kill that.
Oh, come on!
Then you hit that. Here we have a game called Thrive, which looks like nothing. Looks like a space game, life simulator. It's tagged as a sandbox. Early access, $4.99 English only. This is the kind of game that you would kind of expect to maybe be in early access, although I don't know if there ever really is a justification for any game being in early access, really. At least this feels like something that would be complicated and would need some polish later on. But does that need to be labeled early access, or do you just release it in a semi-finished form, a version 1.0 now, and then release a later version update later?
I'm gonna rest for a bit. It looks like I'm up.
Hey, no dirty tricks.
Next we have a game that's all Japanese characters from the look of it. Looks like a kind of pencil sketch, maybe bad art style, or maybe just different art style for a visual novel, but really doesn't look like there's much here. Doesn't even look like there's that much text. It's $12.99 Japanese only.
Feel free to call on me again.
Here we have a game called Tall Poppy, which looks like it's probably an asset flip horror game, which we haven't seen any asset flip horror games today, surprisingly enough. Yep, this does look like garbage though. $2.69 English only. Here we have a game called Fairy Gate. Looks like another asset flip horror game. $5.99 English and Chinese. Here we have Soccer Manager 2022, which we get a manager game almost every couple days. This one looks as good as even any other, maybe even the best manager game I've seen. Still not anything I'd ever want to play, though. It's free to play with in-app purchases. I'm about to lose. I think this will be our last game.
I'll get it right this time. You're done for. Let him go! No. How?
Let's see. Here we have a game called Ball Gun Arena, which looks like just an asset flip test demo of a game.
Well,
$14.99 English only. Here we have a game called Andy's Apple Farm. which maybe is a horror game. It's tagged horror,
Blade is autumn.
but really just looks like garbage.
And farewell.
Early access $2.99. English allegedly full on you.
Like a fallen leaf.
We have a game called Knights and Princesses, which looks like nothing. $1.94, English only. Like every time I turn around in one of these games. Shadow Berserker. Banish an
My
enemy follower.
thunderbolts shall guide you, if they don't kill you first.
I won't miss next time. Why is this so hard? Oh, come on!
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Fight and Fall, which looks like it's a player versus player kind of top-down Mario Party minigame type experience. $9.99. Split screen only. English only. Here we have a game called Lynn's Island, which looks like it's just a survival kind of Stardew Valley. If Stardew Valley was more angled perspective in 3D, almost feels like that's a bit more of a game, but it still feels very asset flippy. Like the farming part and the building part just feels like it's out of place with the fighting and the exploring part. Here we got a
I
card
pray
pack.
that you will be freed from suffering.
Yeah, we are getting kind of nice rewards, and it's not because of this, which I'm taking my sweet time to actually win 7 matches. It's because of these treasure chest rewards, I guess. And if I was gonna just waste some time while shopping, I probably should just try and get more victories there. Quick disconnect victories playing unranked. Well, I guess you have to play ranked to get the treasure chest, so playing ranked. Here we have a game called The 8 Sins New Hell Order. Turn-based strategy games. I'm gonna give this a chance, but I suspect it's pretty ugly animation and not something really worth playing. The depiction of hell here is pretty unrecognizable, so if this is supposed to be something of interest, it visually doesn't look like that. There's 8 demonic races, each representing one of the 7th done deadly sin, with the 8th sin is acedia, which I don't even know what acedia would mean there. I'll give this a follow and see if maybe people like it. I bet no. I think we had already talked about this Video Games Chronicle article that the Battlefield's head of design is leaving DICE following the 2042's release. This was news from last stream. And then Roblox Corp is suing a YouTuber over online harassment. Said YouTuber is accused of making bomb threats targeting this year's Roblox Developers Conference. Well, that sounds bad. The YouTuber is Benjamin Robert Simon, aka Ruben Sim. Of course, you are reading this article definitely from the assumption and the accusation that he is guilty of these accusations. At a certain point, if you're making if you're making bomb threats, you don't have to sue people. That's a criminal prosecution that should happen automatically. They're claiming 3 counts of frauds, 2 counts of tortious interference, and 1 count of breach of contract. Why would he ever be in contract with them? I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually just a outspoken critic of Roblox, and they're trying to silence a critic through a slap case, a strategic lawsuit against participation. And I wouldn't be surprised if several of these charges, if not all of the lawsuit, gets shot down via California's anti-slap laws, which many states have that. Here we have a game on Steam called Devour and Banish Evil Together, but the in update looks fairly visually polished as a horror game, but it's a co-op horror game, which doesn't make it much of a horror game. Can you play it in single player? $3.99, English full audio. This is one of those investigation modes where you're running around and looking for spooky things. Apparently single player mode though is for hardcore players only, and I guess at that point I would just dismiss the game. Like, I probably should dismiss the game anyways. It's just being another low effort horror game, even if it is fairly visually polished. Next we have a game called Element Quest, which is already mixed, so I think we can say no to that. Then we get grappling hook ball tournament. We can obviously say no to. Invitation to Fear. I kind of like this animation style, but the rest of the game kind of looks bad. Survival horror game for 1 to 4 players again. $4.49, several languages. I think I'll say no to that also. Game called Archie, which is apparently a puzzle game where you're manipulating the paths this guy will walk on. Basically playing a pipes game, which I'm always trying to find a good pipes game if one exists. So I'm going to give this a follow. $7.19, several languages. Very well. It's very possible that it's not worth the time, the money. This pipes game seems to have some other elements because he can like cut down bushes that are in his way, which normally that's not the case. Here we have a game called Star Pilot, which just looks like a space game of no interest, so I'll say no to that. I did vote in the Steam Awards, so let's just see if we can reload it to make sure I've got the most recent one. So my picks, if anyone cares, are Resident Evil Village. So I guess this is technically also my picks for games of the year for this terrible year, because I'm not going to do anything with that. Because, yeah, that's probably the best game that came out this year, despite having some problems with its engine and PC and Denuvo early on. VR Game of the Year is a re-release of Myst. I think that probably wins. The running gag of giving time clickers labor of love. Time clickers, at some point when I moved over to a new computer, I lost all progress on that, so I'm never going to get that final achievement, but I wasn't likely to ever get that anyways. Better with Friends Awards, I could have put more thought into it, but I think It Takes Two probably deserves to win that. It sucks though that It Takes Two as a game can't be played without a co-op partner, and thus I'll never cover it. Outstanding visual styles, I think Psychonauts 2 looks a lot better than Psychonauts 1 and deserves that. Also, if you just use the description of outstanding as it stands out from a crowd, Psychonauts' weird graphical style does definitely do that. So I think that works. Most innovative gameplay award, I think, goes to Inscription, just because you'd want to give Inscription something. And in the same way, I want to give Shadow Man Remastered some props, so I picked Best Game You Suck At award, which is, in truth, as an old game, everybody sucks at it, I imagine. In the same way, I'm assuming Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy has the best soundtrack this year, so I'm betting that. These are all games. I also want to give some props to Blue Reflection Second Light, so I gave it Outstanding Story Rich Game Award, assuming that there's story there. I don't even know. Like, I've basically picked games I'd like to highlight and then crammed them into categories instead of actually thinking about what would likely win. It doesn't even matter what you nominate because the mob rule will pick the big games anyways. I wanted to do Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I couldn't find it on Steam, so I guess it's not on Steam. And there definitely are some games that the way they're listed, the way they were released, are just banned, like, and not available to be nominated. Binding of Isaac Rebirth, Repentance DLC, for instance, came out this year. It definitely deserves an award. You can't select it. I think I ran into a couple other games that actually are on Steam, but you just couldn't select it for one reason or another. And then finally, I gave the Sit Back and Relax award to Forza Horizon 5, which I don't know if you really can sit back and relax in that game, but again, I think it deserves an award. So I've done everything now. I nominated 4 games, I nominated a game in each category. I played Time Clickers for half a second to get this one, and then I updated my review for Time Clickers to get that, and that gives me this ugly badge. And that's pretty much all the sale has going for it, really. It's not going to give me trading cards if I buy games right now for the autumn sale. And that definitely makes an argument that I should potentially just not bother and wait until December to buy things. As far as the December sale. Because, yeah. It seems, as far as what's on Steam, there hasn't been another game released in the last 7 hours. So either what's on Steam is broken, or there just has not actually been anything released on Steam in the last 7 hours. So that's one of my several tabs. There has not even been a retweet since the 24th on GameDeveloper.com. So they've just taken the entire weekend off, and they didn't schedule anything, which they definitely could have scheduled a tweet or something, or at least said that they were going to take off on Twitter. There hasn't been anything for Gematsu in the past 10 hours, although in Japan right now it's probably in the middle of the night. And there hasn't been anything for 7 hours in Video Game Chronicles. Maybe there just hasn't been any. Maybe there's been a bug with Twitter in the last 7 hours. If none of my news sources have anything new to talk about. Nope. Devolver Digital tweeted something 14 minutes ago as far as Black Friday advertisements. So let me just go through my main Twitter feed and then we'll call it a day. Well, actually, Twitter is broken, isn't it? Like, I only went down 3 posts, and it's one of those points where it's broken again. Okay, well, then I guess I will leave it at that. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon. Or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list, or gift me a gift card. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.